Welcome everyone to the card game Aquarium, where we talk about Magic the Gathering and the weird and wonderful cards you've probably never thought of playing. Today we're going to be discussing a interesting enchantment which will help you out a lot more with black decks and colourless decks in Pacific, called Heartless Summoning. Heartless Summoning is an enchantment which costs 1 black and 1 to cast and has 2 core effects. The first one being creature spells you cast cost 2 less, and the other one being that creatures you control get -1/-1. So for the cost of your creatures getting very negligibly smaller, you get a large reduction in their casting cost for all creature types. This effect can be very huge in a commander game where costs can go up to like the 7s and 8s, where even with smaller creatures, losing that 1 toughness or 1 power usually doesn't affect it too much, making this a very powerful enchantment to play with. This card can be a great ally in any deck which involves the colour black, because cost reduction on creatures generically is just very powerful and very useful, and there's not a lot of these effects in the game which affect all creatures. Most time these effects are very much saved for either specific archetypes and creature types, or being specifically for artifacts and probably even enchantment and aura reduction, usually things which aren't creatures or aren't specific types of creatures. So having this available to most decks is fantastic to have, and can be used in a multitude of different ways for multiple deck strategies. Although this card can be very useful for a lot of deck strategies, there are some pieces you do need to keep in mind. Aristocrat strategies which want to have a lot of low costing cards to sacrifice and remove may have to reconsider how they get to their end combo pieces, because things like Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat are small enough to be destroyed by Heartless Summoning itself, even if you can get it out earlier. Say we're considering a lot of token pieces. A lot of decks make 1/1 specifically, unless you're looking at zombies, which, yes, zombies come out as 2/2s normally, but a couple like Decay zombies recently have been 2/1s, which again will die immediately to this card's effect. So finding certain pieces which can replace those cards would be worth doing if you're going to build into that idea. Another one to consider as well is if you are more a spell slinger style deck which doesn't want to play a lot of creatures. This again wouldn't be something you would want to consider, because why would you have a creature reduction if you're not playing a lot of creatures? This doesn't reduce your spells, and very often spell slinger decks don't play exactly very beefy creatures to start with. It's not really one which is like, worth like thinking, oh no, if I've included this I've made a mistake, but it's definitely something to take note of, because it's one of the cards you probably wouldn't even want in that style. And I actually don't know why I'm even bringing this point up, because you've probably already seen through this section of the script itself. But you're probably fed up of me talking about the negatives of why this card wouldn't work in certain strategies. You probably want to hear an interesting reason why I want to discuss this as a card you should start considering. And for that, I'm just going to take a very quick jump into the modern format. A little bit out of our comfort zone for us commander players, having a competitive area which can involve very expensive cards. But I need to just bring up a Pacific combo set, which is going to be one which I've actually played myself, and the reason I even found this card, which involves a card called Altar of the Brood. Altar of the Brood is a 1-mana artifact which basically has the effect of whenever you play a permanent spell, yes, this includes lands, you mill your opponent for a single card. This, alongside Mer Retriever, which is a 2-mana creature which when it dies return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand, causes an infinite loop if you have 2 of them. You see, Heartless Summoning reduces the cost of Mer Retriever by 2, making it free, but causes it to die whenever it enters. Altar of the Brood sees it entering and makes your opponent mill for 1, and then you play the other Mer Retriever, grabbing back the first one from the graveyard. Repeat until your opponent's out of cards. This was a modern strategy, which is probably why the card is still not expensive, but it's still useful for those kind of decks, and honestly it's probably going to be the modern deck I will end up rebuilding eventually. But we want to make this useful commander. So what is a commander we can use which has a similar effect to this style of play? And I think I have the perfect one from D&D Forgotten Realms. Yes, the commander card I want to suggest for this build is Azalek the Archlich. This black and 2 legendary zombie wizard has the effect of when it enters the battlefield and you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, return Azalek to the hand and then venture into the dungeon. This is a hilarious combo piece similar to the Alter the Brood one I was discussing before, because for now, a single black mana with Heartless Summoning out, you can just continuously bounce this card to your hand and venture down, and finding ways of generating one black mana source is a lot easier than generating 3 black mana sources, and the dungeon effects can be very powerful. For those of you who don't know, Venture into the Dungeon is a board effect which happens whenever you have a Venture into the Dungeon effect happen, and in that case you get to choose from one of 3 events, which are based on the old D&D dungeons, which is Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Lost Pines, and Tomb of Annihilation, which on the card says if you complete it, then you can no longer do the bounce effect. Just for the sake of going through this video, I'm only going to discuss the Lost Mines, just to give you an overview of what this can do if the combo goes off correctly. So the Lost Mine is a token which is available through the Dungeons & Dragons set, which has several different rooms to go through. When you venture into dungeon, you first off go into the cave entrance area, which allows you to scry 1. Then the path splits, so when you venture the second time, you can choose to either get a token of a goblin or a token of a treasure. Following that, the next venture allows you to go into the third rooms, which have the 3 options of +1/+1 counter, each opponent loses life and gain a life, and Fungal Caverns, which makes your opponent's creatures smaller, -4, -0. And finally, on the last venture, you get to draw a card, and then the dungeon card is complete and goes away. Then after you complete the dungeon, if you venture again, you then get to choose which dungeon you want to go into. Let's say we went back into the Lost Mines, you would cause the scry effect, repeat until you want to stop venturing into that dungeon. This is why I think Heartless Summoning is a good card for this particular style combo, because finding ways to produce mana is not a difficult thing in this game. Finding ways of reducing costs is a lot harder, and the small backtrack of losing a single power and toughness to this card's effect is so negligible that it could be included in pretty much any black style of deck, or even artifact style deck, just because of how versatile just being able to have some casting freedom is. And that is honestly why I think this is a weird and wonderful card that should be considered in some other decks. Yes, this can be a very powerful combo piece, but just cost reduction in general is fantastic. Overall, Heartless Summoning is a very interesting card which fills a niche which everyone overlooks, which is reducing card cost at a very small cost to you. I actually love using this card in the instant kill ideal strategies where I kill my own creature with it to cause effects, but I would love to know what you guys think of this card in the comments below, and if you guys have any suggestions for cards I should look at in the future, please feel free to let me know. This whole channel is based on the idea of cards I think are weird and wonderful, which I want to share with you all, and I would love to hear what you guys think back as well. But until next time, happy deck building.